Her wounds spoke of war. The human's alien bride brought secrets that shook the galaxy. Rhea 9 looked tired. The sky was a sick yellow. Dust blew in long lines across the rock. Prefab walls rattled. Generators hummed like angry insects. It felt like a place the galaxy forgot. Jace Ward stood on the landing pad and checked his chrono again. Late. Again. He flexed his hands and tried not to pace. Bran, the Draconid shift boss, watched from the gate with a crooked grin. "You'll wear a trench in the deck," Bran rumbled. Jace did not answer. Today needed to go right. He had saved 6 months for this one decision. For a chance at not being alone, engines cut the sky. A cargo transport punched through the haze and came down hard. Heat shimmered. Dust boiled. The ramp hissed open. Light spilled out. A slim figure stood in the doorway. She looked like a ghost in the glare. Blue skin that glowed faintly. Silver hair that caught every shard of light. Beautiful. Then Jace saw the truth. Bruises along her throat, scrapes on her arms, dried rust-red blood on torn metallic cloth. She took one step and swayed. He moved without thinking. He caught her by the shoulders. Her skin felt cool. She flinched. Her eyes were pale like winter glass. She tried to speak, but only air came out. A four-armed transport captain tossed a chip. "Delivery." "Contract complete," he said. "Ownership transfer on the file." The words hit like a slap. Ownership. Jace's jaw tightened. "What happened to her?" The captain shrugged 2 sets of shoulders. "Ask the broker. I just moved cargo." He turned away. The hatch sealed. The ship lifted and was gone. Bran stepped closer, his scaled brow pulled low. "We should get her inside." Jace nodded. Together they crossed the yard. Miners stared. Some looked away fast. Some did not. Jace felt something cold and sharp in his chest. Anger. Resolve. He guided the girl through the door of his small unit. Air was cooler inside, quieter. They laid her on the bed. Up close the damage looked worse. Fresh bruises. Old bruises. Cuts that had never been cleaned right. Bran fetched the medkit and set it on the table. His thick hands were gentle. "Breathe slow," he told her. She watched Jace instead. Jace kept his voice low. "Do you understand me?" A tiny nod. "Good," he said. "You're safe here." He tried a small smile. "What is your name?" She swallowed. The word came like a secret. "Lyra," he repeated it softly. Lyra. The name felt like a promise. He cleaned the cuts. He wrapped gauze where the skin was torn. She trembled but did not pull away. When he asked who hurt her, fear moved over her face like a shadow. She shook her head. Jace lifted his hands. "Okay, not now." He met her eyes. "But hear me. Whoever did this will pay." He set water on the shelf and stepped back. Lyra watched every motion as if any quick move might mean harm. Jace understood that look. He had seen it in mirrors long ago on a different world after a different kind of loss. He looked away first. Bran stood in the doorway, huge and quiet. "You sure about this, human?" he asked. "Nothing out here is simple." Jace nodded once. "I know." The truth pressed at him from all sides. This was not what he had planned. He had ordered a chance at companionship, not a wounded stranger, not a fight with whoever owned the sky above Rhea 9. Outside the wind rose. A loose panel clacked against a frame. Somewhere a siren wailed and died. Jace checked the lock. He checked the small pistol on his belt, a habit he wished he did not need. He set a blanket over Lyra's legs. She flinched, then relaxed inch by inch. Night cycle crept over the colony. The generators dimmed. Voices outside faded. Bran left with a last look and a low, "Shout if you need me." Jace spread a mat on the floor and lay down. He stared at the ceiling and listened to Lyra breathe. Slow, uneven. Human thoughts ran wild. Questions, plans, warnings. He closed his eyes. He told himself he was only resting. He told himself he could still live quiet on this rock. Then he saw the bruises again in his mind. He heard the word the captain used, ownership. The anger in his chest hardened into shape. Morning cycle lit the edges of the room in thin gold. Jace woke to find Lyra curled at the far side of the bed, small and watchful. She studied him like a wild creature judging a trap. "You are leaving?" she asked, voice rough and careful. Jace sat up. "For my shift," he said. 8 hours. Food in the cooler. Comset to call me. Lyra's hands tightened in the blanket. You work. As if nothing happened. Jace paused. He heard what she was really asking. He shook his head. No, he said. Something happened. He buckled his belt. And I'm not letting it stand. Outside, the sky hummed. Somewhere above the haze, something unfriendly moved. The day had already chosen a side. So had he. The next morning came in slow amber light. Thin sunlight crawled through the cracks of the metal blinds and landed on Lyra's pale blue skin. She looked fragile but awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, her silver hair tangled like threads of starlight. Jace stood near the counter, pouring ration coffee into a cracked mug. Neither spoke for a long moment. Only the sound of the old generator filled the air. You're leaving. Lyra's voice was soft, like she was still afraid to be heard. Just for my shift, Jace replied. 8 hours, then I'll be back. Her eyes narrowed. You act like nothing happened. He turned, met her gaze. Something happened, he said simply. I just don't know what it means yet. Lyra lowered her eyes. The silence grew heavy again. Then she whispered, You shouldn't have taken me in. Too late for that. Before he could ask more, the door alarm buzzed. Bran filled the doorway, big as always, scales catching the weak light. He looked serious. You need to see this, he said. Outside, the colony's central board flickered with red text. A message from orbit. Unregistered ship detected. Bran's deep voice carried a rough edge. Taurian signatures. Military class. Jace felt his stomach tighten. They're looking for her. Bran nodded slowly. Looks that way. They stepped aside as miners hurried past toward the safety zones. Dust kicked up around their boots. Jace turned back toward his quarters. She's not safe here, Bran sighed. You sure you want to do this, human? Once they know you're helping her, they'll treat you like a traitor. Jace met his eyes. Then I'll be one. Inside, Lyra stood by the window, staring at the red warning light pulsing in the sky. They've found me, she whispered. Jace grabbed a pack from under the bed. You're going to tell me what's really going on now. Her hands shook as she spoke. The man who owned me, Lord Kale, he's not just some noble. He's part of the Taurian Expansion Command. On my world, females like me are made, trained, sold for companionship or politics. We're property. She looked up, shame and fury mixing in her pale eyes. I ran. I stole his access codes and registered myself through the Galactic Marriage Bureau. I used your file to hide. I didn't mean to deceive you. I just needed somewhere no one could reach. Jace stared at her, speechless. She mistook his silence for anger. If you want to turn me in, I won't stop you, she said quietly. He blinked, then shook his head. You think I'd hand you back to someone who did that to you? Her lips parted slightly, confusion in her gaze. Why would you risk everything for me? Because it's what people are supposed to do, Jace said. Something your Lord Kale doesn't understand. Before she could answer, another knock thundered at the door. Bran again, this time urgent. Jace, that bride service you used? It's not what you think. I checked the registry. It's a Taurian slave route. Every file leads to Kale's sector. Jace's jaw clenched. So this was never about love. It was about control. Bran lowered his voice. And there's more. Colony sensors show a small craft dropping from orbit. Taurian markings. Probably a retrieval team. Lyra pressed against the wall, her breath shallow. He won't stop. Not until he silences me. Why? Jace asked. She hesitated, then said, Because I know his secret. He's testing a weapon, a disease that kills only humans. He plans to use it to clear your colonies and claim the worlds for his empire. The words sank in like lead. Jace looked from her to Bran. The air in the room felt thinner. We have to tell Administrator Hale, Jace said. He can contact the Alliance before they land. Bran frowned. You trust him? He's fair, Jace said. He kept Rhea 9 free from Taurian control this long. Lyra's voice trembled. No authority is fair. Power only listens to itself. Jace gave her a small smile. Then we'll make them listen. Outside, sirens started again. Red lights strobed across the colony streets. The shadow of a descending ship slid over the roofs like a spreading bruise. Lyra's fingers brushed Jace's arm, trembling. He looked at her, then at the sky. It's starting, he said. And somewhere above the clouds, Lord Kale's hunters began their descent. The colony of Rhea 9 had never felt so small. Sirens wailed through the dawn haze, echoing off the steel walls. The air smelled of ozone and burning fuel. Jace Ward moved quickly through the narrow alleys, keeping his head low beneath a hood. Beside him, Lyra tried to match his pace, her blue skin hidden under an oversized work jacket. Every time a patrol drone passed overhead, she flinched. They slipped into a cargo lift that rattled down to the lower mining sector. Jace keyed in a manual lock override. "We'll reach the sub-tunnels," he said. "From there we can get to Administrator Hale." Lyra hugged her arms close. "He won't help us. Once the Taurians demand me back, he'll trade me for safety." "He's a bureaucrat, not a monster," Jace replied. Her eyes met his, sharp and sad. "You'd be surprised how often the two are the same." When the lift doors opened, the lower sector looked deserted. Conveyor belts stood frozen. Lights flickered dimly. The hum of machinery had been replaced by the distant thump of landing shuttles above. Bran waited near the tunnel mouth, his massive draconid frame filling the corridor. "Taurian troops have landed by the eastern yard," he said. "They're scanning for energy signatures, looking for her implant." Jace frowned. "Implant?" Bran nodded grimly. "Tracking device, maybe. Most of their property has one." Lyra's face drained of color. "No, I didn't know." She pressed a trembling hand to her neck as if she could feel it buried there. Bran handed Jace a small metal box. "Signal jammer. Not perfect, but it'll blur your trail for a while." Jace clipped it to his belt. "That'll do." He turned to Lyra. "Stay close to me no matter what." They moved through the tunnels, past dripping pipes and half-lit signs. The air grew heavy with dust and mineral fumes. Jace led with steady confidence. He had spent years down here. Lyra followed in silence, every sound making her jump. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "You don't understand what Kale is capable of. He doesn't lose. He destroys." Jace didn't look back. Then he's about to learn what humans do when someone tries to destroy them. A sudden metallic clang froze them. Lights ahead flickered. Bran's nostrils flared. "Movement," he whispered. 3 armored figures emerged from the shadows. Taurian soldiers, tall and reptilian, their armor black and red. "Found them," one hissed into his comm. Jace pulled his sidearm. "Run," he shouted. Lyra bolted as laser fire scorched the tunnel walls. Sparks rained. Bran roared, swinging a steel rod like a club, knocking one soldier flat. Jace fired 2 quick shots, hitting another square in the chest. "Keep moving." Bran barked. "I'll hold them."
"Not alone,"
Jace yelled, but Bran shoved him forward with surprising strength. "You're the one she trusts, human. Go." Jace grabbed Lyra's hand and sprinted through the side shaft. The floor shook from distant detonations. Miners fighting back, maybe. The deeper they went, the louder the alarms became. At the tunnel's end stood a heavy blast door marked admin access, authorized personnel only. Jace swiped his ID. The door resisted, then hissed open. They stumbled into a small corridor lit by blue emergency lights. Administrator Hale waited inside with 2 security drones hovering beside him. His expression was strained, uncertain. "Ward," he said slowly, "you've brought me quite a problem." "She's not a problem, she's evidence," Jace said, breathless. "The Taurians are building a bioweapon. She's seen the data." Hale's eyes flickered toward Lyra. "Do you have proof?" "Not yet," Jace admitted. "But we can get it. Her access codes can reach Kale's files." The administrator folded his thin hands together. "You're asking me to defy the hegemony. That could mean war." Jace stepped closer. "Then let it mean something. You always said Rhea 9 should stand independent. This is your chance to prove it." Hale studied him for a long, tense moment. Then he sighed. "There's an old relay station under the comm tower, off-grid. If she can pull the data, I can stall the Taurians." Lyra hesitated. "You would do that for a human?" Hale gave a weary smile. "I'm doing it for everyone who still believes we can be free." Outside, another explosion shook the colony. The lights flickered red. Hale looked toward the ceiling. "Go, now, before they trace you here." Jace nodded. "Thank you." He guided Lyra toward the maintenance hatch at the back wall. Just before they slipped through, Hale called after them. "Ward, whatever's in those files, make sure the right people see it." As they dropped into the darkness below, the colony alarms rose into a single, unbroken wail. The war for Rhea 9 had begun, and for the first time since she arrived, Lyra wasn't running alone. The tunnels beneath Rhea 9 felt alive. Steam hissed from cracked pipes, water dripped in slow rhythm, and the air shimmered with heat from old mining reactors. Jace led the way. his flashlight cutting thin lines through the gloom. Lyra followed closely, her steps light but unsteady, her face pale beneath the flicker of the beam. "We're almost there," Jace whispered. "The relay station should be just past this maintenance shaft." Lyra nodded, but her eyes darted nervously at every sound. "Something's following us," she murmured. Jace paused. He listened. At first only the hum of the tunnels, then footsteps, heavy ones, metallic. He motioned for her to hide behind a pile of rusted pipes. A second later, a beam of red light swept the passage. 3 Taurian soldiers moved with precision, scanning the ground. Their armor hummed softly as they advanced. Lyra's breath quickened. The signal jammer on Jace's belt blinked weakly, its power nearly gone. He met her eyes, pressed a finger to his lips. The soldiers stopped near the corner. One tapped a small device against the wall, its pulse echoing through the tunnel. A sharp tone filled the air, high and cold. Lyra gasped, clutching her head. The tone grew louder, like something vibrating deep inside her skull. Jace grabbed her shoulders. "Lyra, what is it?" She trembled violently. "They're activating a tracker." "Inside me." Jace's stomach dropped. "They can find us through you." The lead soldier turned his head at the sound. "Signal locked," he hissed into his comm. "Target proximity confirmed." Jace didn't wait. He fired. Blue plasma cut through the gloom, striking the soldier's shoulder. The others reacted fast, firing back. Sparks and dust filled the air. Jace grabbed Lyra's hand and ran. They sprinted down a side tunnel, the sound of boots and energy fire echoing behind them. The path forked ahead. Jace pulled her left into a narrow crawl space that reeked of metal and ozone. They fell into darkness again, breathing hard. "They'll track the signal," Lyra panted. "They won't stop." "Then we break it," Jace said, determination sharpening his tone. "There's a med bay in the relay sector. Maybe I can dig that thing out of you." She looked terrified. "If you try and it's connected to my nervous system, then I'll be careful." He reached for her hand. "You trust me?" Her winter pale eyes held his for a long second. Finally, she nodded. Yes. They moved again, deeper into the underground maze. The tunnel opened into a cavern carved by ancient drills. In the center stood the forgotten relay station, a skeletal dome surrounded by corroded panels and dormant screens. It looked dead, but Jace knew better. These old Alliance models were built to last. He crossed to the main console and powered it up with a hardwired cell from his pack. The monitors blinked, coughed static, then glowed faint blue. Lyra stared at the flickering data streams. "This is human tech," she whispered. "From before the hegemony wars." "Exactly," Jace said. "And off the grid. The Taurians can't jam it easily." He pointed to a reclined diagnostic chair. "Sit, I'll see if I can locate that implant." Lyra obeyed, trembling slightly. The glow of the monitors painted her face in shifting light. Jace worked quickly, scanning her neck and shoulder with the medical scanner he'd salvaged from a supply crate. The screen lit with red markers. "There," he muttered. "Tiny, just under the skin near your spine. Some kind of biosignal transponder. Can you disable it?" She asked. "Maybe," he said. "But if I cut it wrong, it might trigger a failsafe." Her lips parted in fear. "Failsafe? Pain, shock, or worse. These things are cruel by design." Lyra's hand found his wrist. "Then don't risk it." He looked at her. At the bruises that still marked her arms, the faint silver scars on her collarbone. "I'm already risking everything," he said quietly. "Might as well finish the job." He pressed the sterilizer against her skin. The device hissed softly. She winced as he made a small incision, his movements careful and precise. The scanner beeped once, then again. "Almost there," he whispered. "Hold still." A sudden tremor rocked the cavern. Dust fell from the ceiling. The relay lights flickered. Jace froze. Lyra's breathing quickened. "They found us." Jace ripped the chip free just as a blast tore through the far tunnel. Metal screamed. The implant fell into his palm, still pulsing with a red light. He slammed it onto the floor and crushed it under his boot. The light went out. Lyra gasped, clutching the wound on her neck. "It's gone," she whispered. "I can't feel it anymore." "Good," Jace said, hauling her to her feet. "Because they're here." Through the smoke, he could see silhouettes, Taurian soldiers pouring into the cavern. Brand's voice suddenly echoed through Jace's comm. "Ward, hold tight. We're bringing company." "Company?" Jace asked, firing a burst toward the tunnel entrance. "Yeah," Brand growled. "Half the miners on Rhea 9 just declared open rebellion." The sound of explosions followed. Closer, louder, angrier. Jace looked at Lyra. Blood streaked across her neck, her eyes wide but fierce. For the first time, she didn't look afraid. She looked ready. He smiled grimly. Then let's give them something to regret. Above them, the colony shook. The war had found its spark. The colony burned above them. Even from the tunnels, Jace could hear the deep thud of explosions, the hiss of laser fire, the rumble of machinery tearing itself apart. Rhea 9 had become a battlefield. He reloaded his blaster, the metal hot in his grip. Lyra leaned against the relay console, blood still wet on her neck from where he'd torn out the implant. Her breath came quick and shallow, but her eyes, those pale winter blue eyes, were sharp and alive. Brand's voice crackled through the comm unit again. "Ward, you still breathing down there?" "Barely," Jace replied. "We've got the tracker out. But we're pinned." "Good, because you've got friends now." The tunnel wall behind them shuddered. A moment later, a section of steel plating collapsed inward and Brand burst through, covered in soot and armed with a mining drill big enough to punch through a tank. Behind him came half a dozen miners of different species, dust-covered, furious, determined. "Whole sector's rising," Brand said with a rough grin. "Taurians thought they could walk in here and take people. Turns out people bite back." Lyra looked stunned. "They're fighting for me?" Brand's reptilian grin widened. "Not just for you, girl. For themselves. For every chain they ever wore." Another explosion boomed from somewhere above and the ceiling rained dust. Jace steadied Lyra as Brand handed him a battered map slate. "We can't hold this place long," the Draconid said. "But the comm relays link to the old mining array. There's a path through the coolant shafts that leads straight to the central communications tower." "That's where we can broadcast the data," Jace said, remembering Hale's instructions. "The proof of Kale's weapon." Brand nodded. "Exactly. But it's a death run. The Taurians are everywhere." Jace's jaw tightened. "We'll make it." Lyra touched his arm. "If we send this data, it will expose Kale, but also the hegemony's secret program. You'll make enemies on both sides." He met her gaze. "Good. That means we're doing something right." They moved fast. The miners cleared the path ahead, fighting with mining torches and makeshift rifles. The tunnels flashed with bursts of light, echoing with the clash of alien voices. Jace kept Lyra close, guiding her through the chaos. They reached the coolant sector, a vast cavern filled with vertical tanks and steaming pipes. The air shimmered from heat. The floor was slick with condensation, turning every step into a gamble. As they crossed, a Taurian squad appeared on the upper catwalks. Their red armor gleamed against the steam. "Down!" Jace shouted, pulling Lyra behind a pillar as plasma bolts ripped through the air. One miner went down screaming. Another fired back with a salvaged railgun, punching holes through the metal walkway. Brand roared, charging forward with the drill spinning like a thunderstorm. Sparks exploded around him as he smashed through the enemy line. The noise was deafening. Metal tearing, the hiss of molten steel, the cries of soldiers falling. "Go!" Brand shouted over the chaos. "Get to the tower. I'll cover your tail." Jace hesitated only a second. He grabbed Lyra's hand and ran. They weaved through pipes and debris until they reached a narrow stairwell that spiraled up toward faint daylight. Every step echoed like a drum beat. Halfway up, Lyra stumbled, clutching her chest. "It's burning inside," she gasped. Jace turned, panic flashing across his face. "You're bleeding again?" "No," she said, trembling. "The implant, when you removed it, something changed. I feel heat like it's still inside me." He froze. "A failsafe?" She nodded weakly. "Maybe. Kale wouldn't rely on just one." Jace cursed under his breath. "Then we move faster." They reached the top of the stairwell and pushed through a hatch. The central tower rose before them, a skeletal structure of antennas and shattered glass, half the panels still glowing with emergency power. The sky above was a deep toxic orange lit by the fire of orbiting ships. Jace helped Lyra onto the platform. "This is it," he said. "You can access the system here, right?" She nodded, connecting the data crystal she carried to the main console. Lines of code raced across the screen. "It's working," she whispered. "But the connection is unstable. I need a stronger power source." Jace looked around. The tower's generator hummed weakly nearby. "I can boost it manually, but someone needs to hold the line here." "I'll do it," she said. "No, you're not fighting." Her lips curved into a faint, defiant smile. "I wasn't asking." Below them, shouts and footsteps echoed. Taurian soldiers scaling the tower's base. Jace slammed a new power cell into the generator. The whole platform vibrated as energy surged through it. The console lit up with green light. Lyra's fingers flew over the keys. Uploading. 40%. 50. Laser fire cut across the deck. Jace returned fire, each shot lighting the smoke. One soldier fell. Another climbed higher. He ducked behind a beam, breath ragged, and yelled over the noise, "How much longer?" 80%. The tower shook again. A stray blast hit the generator, sending sparks in every direction. Jace grabbed a live cable and jammed it back into place, ignoring the burn on his hand. The screen blinked. 90%, 95, done, Lyra shouted. The data's out. At that exact moment, the top of the tower erupted. The explosion threw them both backward. Jace hit the floor hard, his ears ringing. Smoke and dust filled the air. When he looked up, Lyra was on the ground beside him, breathing but barely conscious. The console was gone, a smoking ruin. He crawled to her and lifted her gently. "Lyra, talk to me!" She opened her eyes with effort. The message reached them. Kale's secrets are no longer his. Below, the colony burned brighter, as if the planet itself was waking up. Bran's rebellion had turned into full-scale war. Jace held her close, his voice rough. Then let him come. Let him see what humans do when they're cornered. Above them, in the blood-red sky, new ships began to appear. Ones bearing the silver crest of the human alliance. Help was coming, but so was Kale. The sky over Rhea 9 was no longer a sky. It was fire. 2 fleets, 1 human, 1 Taurian, clashed above the burning colony like gods tearing the heavens apart. Blue plasma streaks and crimson bolts crossed paths in wild arcs. The sound, even from the surface, was thunder without pause. Jace and Lyra stumbled out of the ruined tower, coughing through smoke. Wind whipped dust and flame into spirals around them. The central compound had become a war zone. Mining rigs turned into barricades, loaders transformed into makeshift tanks. The people of Rhea 9 were fighting for their home. Bran's massive shape appeared through the haze, dragging a wounded miner over his shoulder. His scales were blackened by soot, one eye bleeding. Yet he grinned when he saw them. "You actually did it," he roared. "The Alliance heard your call. They jumped in early." Above them, human ships dove in perfect formation, sleek silver hulls glinting like knives in sunlight. The Taurian dreadnought responded with an energy beam that carved a molten trench through the ground. The colony shook. "Then we're not done yet," Jace said, steadying Lyra. Her skin had grown paler, almost translucent. The wound where he'd removed the implant glowed faintly beneath the skin, a thin red pulse. "It's reacting," she whispered. "It's like it's alive," Jace frowned. "Kyle built that thing to track and control you. Maybe it's trying to connect again." "Or worse," Bran growled. "Maybe it's about to explode." Before Jace could respond, his wristcom crackled. "Alliance ground team to civilian ward, report." The voice was calm, sharp, female. "This is Captain Raya Sloan, UAF Intrepid. We have your transmission. You've triggered an interstellar incident and we're inbound to extract you. Hold your position." "Easier said than done," Jace muttered. "We've got half the Taurian army between us and clear sky." "Then you better make a hole," Sloan replied. "ETA, 5 minutes," Bran laughed. 5 minutes? That's either salvation or suicide." "Both," Jace said, grabbing a fallen rifle. "Let's make it count." They pushed forward through the ruins. Taurian soldiers advanced in waves, cold, disciplined, efficient. But the miners fought with raw fury, using everything from drills to plasma cutters. The air reeked of ozone and burning metal. Jace fired until his blaster overheated, switching to a pickaxe when one soldier got too close. "Ward!" Bran shouted over the roar. "To your left!" Jace turned just in time to see a Taurian aiming for Lyra. He dove, tackled the soldier, and rolled across the dirt. The shot grazed his shoulder. Pain flared white, but he kept fighting until the soldier went still. Lyra knelt beside him, pressing her hands to the burn. "You're bleeding." "I'll live," he said through clenched teeth. "Can you still walk?" She nodded weakly, though her glow had grown brighter, unnaturally so. The pulse beneath her skin was spreading through her veins like threads of light. Bran stared in alarm. "That's not good." Lyra looked down at her hands, trembling. "The implant Kale designed it to release a contagion if I died. But I think he built another failsafe. If I'm near death, it activates on its own." Jace felt his heart drop. So he turned you into a weapon. Lyra met his gaze, voice trembling but steady. Then I won't die here. A deep rumble rolled overhead. The Taurian dreadnought began descending, its massive shadow swallowing the colony. Energy vents along its underbelly glowed bright crimson. It was preparing an orbital strike. Bran swore. They'll vaporize the entire colony just to kill you. Not if we stop them first, Jace said. Where's Hale? The administrators holed up at the medbay with the wounded, Bran said. But if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, I'm going to link the relay beacon to the Alliance flagship, Jace said quickly. If I can transmit Kale's signal codes through their network, we can shut down his weapons remotely. Lyra blinked. You learned Taurian code? He smirked faintly. I pay attention when geniuses talk. Bran barked a laugh. Human insanity. I'm starting to like it. They fought their way to the medbay. The air was thick with smoke and screams. Inside, wounded miners lay in rows, tended by overworked medbots. Hale stood among them, his usually calm face streaked with grime. Ward, he shouted. The council confirmed your transmission. Kale's empire's fracturing. Some of his officers are refusing orders. Then he's desperate, Jace said. He'll strike before they can stop him. Lyra staggered against a table, the glow in her veins now blinding. Jace, it's spreading. I can feel it burning through me. He caught her before she fell. Stay with me. Just a little longer. Outside, the dreadnought opened fire again. Shockwaves shattered windows and knocked them all to their knees. The horizon turned white with heat. Then, silence. For one breath. Two. And in that fragile pause, the Alliance fleet arrived in full. Massive carriers blotted out the sun, unleashing a storm of blue-white energy that slammed into the dreadnought. The blast painted the world in light. Bran shielded his eyes. By the stars. Jace looked up, voice barely a whisper. That's humanity. Through the smoke and chaos, the Intrepid began its descent, engines blazing like a second sunrise. Jace gripped Lyra's hand as her pulse flickered beneath his fingers. Hold on, he said fiercely. They're here for us. Lyra's eyes fluttered open, faint but focused. If I don't make it, you will. He cut her off. You're the reason they came. The ground trembled as the Intrepid's shuttle touched down. Alliance Marines poured out, weapons raised, shields glowing. One of them, Captain Sloan, strode toward them through the dust. Her voice steady and commanding. Human or not, she said, looking straight at Lyra. No one dies today. Behind her, the wreckage of Kale's dreadnought began to fall, burning across the horizon like a dying star. The war wasn't over, but humanity had arrived, and Rhea 9 would remember the day the sky burned, and humans fought back. The storm of war began to quiet. Smoke curled toward the bruised sky where fire still lingered like old scars. The once barren colony of Rhea 9 now glowed red and silver, rubble, embers, and the fading light of explosions that had changed the fate of two species. Jace Ward stood on what remained of the main platform. His body aching, his uniform burned and torn. The air tasted of metal and dust. The Alliance dropship loomed nearby, its engines humming low and steady, a sound that, after days of fear, felt almost peaceful. He turned at a soft sound. Lyra stood behind him, wrapped in a thermal cloak, her faint blue glow dim but steady. The strange light that had burned through her veins was gone now. Dr. Kirasun and the medics had purged the toxin and deactivated the remaining code from Kale's implant. What was left of it lay sealed inside a containment case. Silent, lifeless metal that had once been the key to genocide. You should be resting, Jace said, his voice rough from smoke and exhaustion. Lyra gave a tired smile. I've done enough lying down lately. She looked up at the sky where Alliance ships still patrolled the upper atmosphere. So this is what victory feels like? He glanced around at the shattered buildings, the flickering lights, the faces of wounded miners being loaded onto shuttles. No, he said. This is survival. Victory comes later. Bran lumbered toward them, his scales cracked but his grin wide. Survival's good enough for today. The Taurians are pulling back. Their flagship's in ruins and Kale's forces are scattering like frightened hatchlings. Lyra's expression darkened. And Kale himself? Bran's grin faded. Alliance troops boarded his escape craft. Found it half destroyed, life support offline. No body, just his armor. Jace sighed. Then he's still out there. Lyra met his gaze, calm but cold. He won't stop. He's lost his army, his empire, his power. Now he'll only want revenge. Let him come, Jace said quietly. He'll find we're harder to kill the second time. Above them, the largest of the human ships, the UAF Intrepid, hovered like a guardian angel. Admiral Sloane's voice echoed from a nearby communicator. Rhea 9 is secure. All civilians to be relocated. Alliance Command requests immediate debrief from Ward and Lyra Eisen. Lyra tilted her head. Eisen? Jace smiled faintly. They gave you a surname. Sounds human, she said softly. Maybe that's the point. Bran chuckled, shaking his head. You humans, always naming things before they're even cooled. As they walked toward the shuttle, the broken colony spread around them like a memory fading into history. Workers cheered weakly as they passed. Some saluted. Others simply nodded. Word had already spread. The miner and the alien woman who stopped a war. Inside the medbay of the Intrepid, the atmosphere was sterile and bright. Lyra sat on a bed while Admiral Sloane stood nearby, reading from a digital pad. The Hegemony Council received your transmission, Sloane said. Kale's project was officially condemned. Their ambassador has requested diplomatic peace talks with the Human Alliance. You didn't just save this colony, Lieutenant. You may have prevented a galaxy-wide war. Jace blinked. Lieutenant? Sloane smiled faintly. Field promotion. You earned it. Lyra watched the exchange quietly. When Sloane left, she turned to Jace. So what now? Back to mining rocks? He shook his head. No, back to Earth. They offered citizenship to both of us. Her eyes brightened faintly. Earth, she whispered, the word tasting unfamiliar yet full of wonder. I've seen it in pictures, oceans, forests, sky that changes color. You'll see it for real soon, Jace said. And this time no one owns you. No one decides for you. For the first time since he'd met her, Lyra smiled. A real smile, soft and unguarded. And you, Jace Ward? What will you do when there's no one left to fight? He looked out the viewport, watching the last fires of Rhea 9 fade beneath the stars. Then I'll start building, he said. Something worth fighting for next time. Bran's voice echoed from the corridor. Captain! The ship's ready for jump. You coming, or do I have to carry you again? Jace laughed, the sound hoarse but genuine. Keep your scales on, Bran. As they stepped onto the observation deck, the stars stretched before them, endless and bright. Lyra reached for his hand, her touch cool and steady. Together they watched as Rhea 9 grew smaller, its red surface turning to a single spark among billions. Lyra whispered, From a cage to the stars. I never imagined freedom would look like this. Jace squeezed her hand gently. That's the thing about humans, he said. We don't imagine freedom. We make it. The Intrepid's engines flared blue and the ship leapt into faster-than-light travel. The stars streaked into lines, and for one last moment, Rhea 9 vanished behind them. Just a scar in the galaxy, and a promise. Somewhere, in the deep black, a damaged escape craft drifted silently. Inside, a figure with crimson scales stared at a broken hologram of a blue-skinned woman and a human man. His eyes burned with hatred and something darker. Kale was still alive, and as the stars around him reflected in his shattered visor, he whispered, Enjoy your peace, human. It won't last. Back aboard the Intrepid, Lyra leaned her head on Jace's shoulder as they watched the warped trails of light. For now there was calm. For now there was hope. The war had ended. But the story of humanity, of love, rebellion, and defiance had just begun.